The late afternoon sun bled through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the penthouse, casting long, golden stripes across the Italian marble floors. Evelyn Vance stood before a full-length, antique, gilded mirror. Her reflection, a study in quiet elegance. She wore a deep emerald silk gown that clung to her form, a testament to the disciplined life she led. Every detail was perfect, from the single diamond teardrop earrings to the understated chignon at the nape of her neck. Yet her eyes, the color of warm honey, held a distant, almost melancholic gaze. She wasn't looking at herself, but through herself at the woman she was supposed to be. "Perfect," Robert said, his voice echoing from the doorway. He strode into the cavernous dressing room, already the magnate, the titan of industry. His tuxedo was impeccably tailored, his watch a subtle signal of immense wealth. He didn't look at her. Not really. His eyes scanned her as one might appraise a valuable painting, a beautiful asset that completed the picture of his success. "The Hamiltons will be there. I need you to be charming. Mrs. Hamilton is on the board of the Children's Foundation." Evelyn turned, a practiced smile gracing her lips. "Of course, darling," she moved to him, her fingers expertly adjusting his bow tie, a familiar, intimate gesture that had become almost mechanical over the years. "And I'll be sure to mention our latest donation." "Good girl," he murmured, his attention already drifting to the buzz of his phone. He tapped out a quick reply, a slight frown creasing his brow. This was their life, a meticulously choreographed ballet of social events, business dinners, and charity. Their home, a modern palace overlooking the city, was less a sanctuary and more a stage. It was a beautiful cage, and Evelyn was its most prized, most silent inhabitant. Years ago, she had arrived in this city with a portfolio full of fashion sketches and a heart full of dreams. She'd had a flair for design, a unique eye that saw stories in fabric and form. But then she met Robert. His ambition was a gravitational force, and she had willingly let herself be pulled into his orbit, her own dreams shrinking until they were small enough to fit inside a dusty box in the back of a forgotten closet. Later that evening, the gala was a symphony of clinking champagne flutes, hushed power brokering, and the flash of camera bulbs. Evelyn played her part flawlessly. She laughed at the right jokes, her hand resting delicately on Robert's arm. She engaged Mrs. Hamilton in a heartfelt conversation about pediatric care, her sincerity a rare and genuine thing in this room of polished veneers. For a moment, while discussing a potential theme for the next fundraiser, a spark of her old self ignited. "Imagine a secret garden theme," she suggested, her eyes lighting up. "Whimsical, but elegant. We could use textures, layers of tulle and floral appliques, to transform the space." Mrs. Hamilton was captivated. "Evelyn, that's a brilliant idea. You have a real talent for this." Before she could respond, Robert's hand tightened on her elbow. "My wife has many hidden talents," he said with a dismissive chuckle, steering her away. "But we mustn't bore you with party planning." The spark in Evelyn's eyes died, extinguished by his casual condescension. She was his wife, an extension of him, not a person with ideas of her own. Back home, long after midnight, the silence of the penthouse was deafening. Glittering gown lay pooled on a velvet chaise lounge. Robert stood by the window, silhouetted against the city lights, his back to her. He was on the phone again, his voice a low, intimate murmur that was starkly different from the booming tone he used for business. Evelyn watched him, a cold dread coiling in her stomach. She had felt this distance growing for months, a widening chasm between them that no amount of devotion on her part could seem to bridge. She thought about the sketches in the box, the ghost of a girl who wanted to create, to build something of her own. She had traded that girl for this life, for this man who now felt like a stranger in their shared home. She had polished the bars of her golden cage until they gleamed, convincing herself it was a castle. But as she watched her husband whisper secrets to the city, she realized a cage, no matter how beautiful, was still a prison. The days that followed the gala bled into one another, each marked by a growing, unnerving silence. The whispers in the marble halls of their home were no longer of staff or social schedules, but of the unspoken things that festered between Evelyn and Robert. Breakfast became a solitary affair. Evelyn would sit at the vast dining table, a single place setting laid out for her, the scent of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the sterile emptiness of the room. Robert was always gone before she woke, or he would be in his home office, the heavy oak doors firmly closed, a barrier she no longer felt welcome to cross. His excuses became more frequent and less plausible. A last-minute meeting with the Tokyo office. He'd text hours after he was due home. The deal is at a critical stage. Don't wait up. The dinners she carefully planned with the chef went uneaten. The concert tickets she'd procured for his birthday sat on the hall table, gathering dust. One evening, determined to break through the wall he had built, Evelyn prepared his favorite meal. Herself a simple but elegant roasted chicken with rosemary potatoes, the kind of comfort food they used to share in the early days of their relationship. She lit candles, put on a soft jazz record, and waited. Waited. At DSPM, her phone chimed with a curt message. Something came up. Can't make it. She looked at the perfectly set table for two, the flickering candles casting dancing shadows on the walls, the illusion of their perfect marriage. An illusion she had so painstakingly maintained was cracking under the strain. She ate alone, the taste of ashes in her mouth, the jazz music sounding more like His distance was more than just physical. It was a profound emotional abandonment. When they were in the same room, his gaze would slide past her, his mind clearly elsewhere. He'd scroll through his phone while she spoke, offering only a non-committal MMMHMM in response. The shared jokes, the easy intimacy, the very language of their marriage had evaporated, leaving a void filled with her own anxious thoughts. She began to notice small, damning details. A charge on a credit card statement for a boutique hotel across town. The faint, unfamiliar scent of a floral perfume, something sweet and cloying. So unlike her own subtle, woody fragrance clinging to the collar of his shirt when he finally came home in the early hours of the morning, each discovery was a small, sharp cut to her heart. One afternoon, while searching for a misplaced cufflink in his drawer, her fingers brushed against a small, velvet jewelry box. It wasn't the brand he usually favored for her. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she opened it. Inside, nestled on a bed of black satin, was a delicate gold necklace with a single, perfect sapphire. It was beautiful, vibrant, and painfully, obviously, not for her. Sapphires were not her stone. She had never worn them. That night, she decided to confront him. She couldn't live with the whispers and the shadows any longer. She found him in the library, a glass of amber liquid in his hand, staring into the unlit fireplace. She held the box out to him, her hand trembling slightly. I found this, Robert. He glanced at the box, then at her, his expression unreadable, almost bored. It's a gift. For whom? Her voice was barely a whisper. He took a slow sip of his drink, his eyes cold as ice. You've become so paranoid lately, Evelyn? It's unbecoming. He didn't deny it. He didn't explain. He simply turned her fear back on her, making her feel as though she were the one at fault, her insecurity the problem, not his betrayal. He was a master of this, of twisting reality until she doubted her own sanity. She was the devoted wife, the keeper of their home, and yet he made her feel like an intruder in her own life, a detective snooping for clues to a crime he was committing in plain sight. The marble halls felt colder than ever, echoing with the sound of her own breaking heart. The air in the grand living room was thick with tension, heavy and suffocating. A storm was brewing outside, the sky a bruised purple, mirroring the turmoil in Evelyn's soul. She had decided that this would be the night. No more whispers, no more self-doubt. She would fight for her marriage, for the life she had dedicated herself to building. She stood by the fireplace, the empty jewelry box feeling heavy as a tombstone in her hands. She had rehearsed what she would say, a plea for honesty, a promise to work through whatever was broken between them. Robert entered the room, not with the weary gait of a man returning from a long day, but with a brisk, unnerving purpose. He didn't even seem to notice the storm outside, or the one raging in his wife's eyes. He loosened his tie, his movements sharp and decisive. "Robert, we need to talk," she began, her voice steadier than she expected. He cut her off, his voice devoid of any warmth. "You're right. We do." He walked over to the bar, pouring himself a drink with a steady hand. He didn't offer her one. "I was going to wait for a better time, but there's no point in dragging this out." He turned to face her, his face a mask of detached resolve. The man she had loved, the man she had built her world around, looked at her as if she were a business associate in a deal that had gone sour. "I'm leaving you, Evelyn." The words hit her with the force of a physical blow, knocking the air from her lungs. The speech she had prepared dissolved into nothingness. "What? What are you talking about?" she stammered, her mind refusing to process the statement. "It's over," he said, his tone flat and final. "I've filed for divorce." "Divorce?" The word was a gunshot in the silent room. "But why? Is it because of someone else?" She held up the box, a desperate, pathetic piece of evidence. He almost smiled, a cruel, pitying twist of his lips. "Yes. Her name is Selina." The name fell from his lips with an easy familiarity that twisted the knife in Evelyn's gut. "She's a model. You've probably seen her. She's young, she's vibrant, she has her own life, her own ambitions. She understands the world I live in now." Every word was a calculated strike, designed to highlight everything he believed Evelyn was not. Not young, not vibrant, not ambitious. A relic of a past he was eager to shed. The public humiliation washed over her in a sickening wave. He wasn't just leaving her. He was replacing her with a newer, shinier model. A trophy wife for his new and improved life, after everything I've done for you, she whispered, the betrayal a raw, gaping wound. "I gave up my dreams for you, for us. And I gave you a life anyone would kill for," he retorted, his voice rising with impatience. "Luxury, status, comfort. Don't act the martyr, Eveline. It doesn't suit you. We both know this marriage has been a formality for years." His cruelty was breathtaking. He was rewriting their history, erasing every moment of love and sacrifice, painting it all as a mere transaction. The room began to spin. The ornate furniture, the priceless art, the very walls of her home seemed to warp and close in on her. She caught sight of her reflection in the large, gilded mirror above the mantelpiece. She saw a woman with terror in her eyes, her face pale, her perfect chignon suddenly looking like a relic. The reflection seemed to fracture, splitting into 1,000 tiny pieces, just like her world. "My lawyers will be in touch with yours," Robert said, setting his glass down with a definitive click. He turned to leave, his duty done. "The prenup is quite clear. You'll be well taken care of." He was already gone, moving on to his next acquisition, his next conquest. Evelyn sank to her knees on the Persian rug, a silent scream trapped in her throat. The first crack of thunder split the sky, and the rain began to lash against the windows. But she didn't hear it. All she could hear was the shattering of her life, the sound of her own reflection breaking into a million pieces. The weeks that followed were a blur of sterile lawyers' offices and the hollow echo of her own footsteps in the vast, empty penthouse. The divorce was swift and brutal, a clinical amputation of her life. Robert's attorneys were sharks, efficient and merciless. The prenuptial agreement she had signed years ago, in a haze of love and trust, was an ironclad cage. It provided a settlement that, to the outside world, seemed generous, but in the context of the life she was being evicted from, it was a pittance. It was designed to ensure her silence and a quick exit, not her future security. Her name, once a staple on every exclusive guest list, was now whispered in gossip columns alongside humiliating headlines. Tycoon trades in wife for younger model. Evelyn Vance, the woman left behind. She saw her own pained face, captured by paparazzi, as she left a lawyer's office, splashed across the cover of a tabloid in a grocery store checkout line. Beside her photos was a glowing, sun-drenched picture of Robert and Selina on a yacht in St. Bart's, their arms wrapped around each other, laughing. The public humiliation was a constant, suffocating presence. Friends she had hosted at countless dinner parties suddenly stopped returning her calls. The social circle that had defined her existence closed ranks, leaving her on the outside, a pariah. The day the movers came was the final indignity. Strangers in blue uniforms methodically packed up the life she had curated. They wrapped the porcelain she had collected, boxed the books she had read, dismantled the home she had loved. She was allowed to take only her personal belongings, a pathetic collection of clothes, books, and a few sentimental items that felt like relics from another person's existence. As she directed them to a small box in the back of her closet, the one containing her old sketchbooks, she felt a pang of something she couldn't name. It was the only part of the house that felt truly hers. She moved into a small, furnished apartment in a part of the city she barely recognized. The walls were thin, the furniture impersonal, the windows looking out onto a brick wall. The opulence and space of her former life were replaced by a cramped, beige reality. The silence here was different from the silence in the penthouse. It wasn't vast and echoing, it was dense and crushing, pressing in on her from all sides. Days turned into nights without distinction. She didn't unpack. She didn't eat. Se would sit on the edge of the unfamiliar bed, staring at the boxers that contained the remnants of her shattered identity. Who was Evelyn Vance without Robert, without the penthouse, without the galas, and the charity boards? The question terrified her because she had no answer. She had so completely subsumed her identity into his that without him she felt like a ghost, an echo of a person. Her reflection in the dusty bathroom mirror was a stranger's. Her eyes were hollow, her skin pale. The disciplined elegancy was gone, replaced by a raw, unvarnished despair. This was rock bottom. It was a place of profound loneliness, stripped of all the external validations that had propped up her sense of self. She was no longer Mrs. Robert Vance, the magnate's wife. She was just Evelyn, a woman adrift in the wreckage of her life, with no map and no shore in sight. The echoes in the empty rooms of her new life were not of past glories, but of a future she could no longer imagine. For what felt like an eternity, Evelyn remained in a state of suspended animation, adrift in the gray fog of her grief. The boxers in her small apartment remained sealed, monuments to a life she couldn't bear to confront. One bleak afternoon, driven by a desperate need to simply do something, she decided to throw one of the boxers away. It was a large, dusty carton from the back of her old closet, labeled college mementos. It was heavy, and as she dragged it toward the door, the worn cardboard tore, spilling its contents onto the floor. Among the faded yearbooks and old textbooks, a leather-bound portfolio slid out. Its pages, yellowed with age, were filled with fashion sketches. Charcoal and watercolor designs of dresses, coats, and gowns leaped from the paper, alive with a passion and ambition she had long since buried. There were notes scribbled in the margins, ideas about fabric, drape, and form. It was the work of a young woman who believed she could create beauty, who saw the world as a canvas. Was the work of a ghost. Evelyn sank to the floor, her fingers tracing the bold, confident lines of a sketch for an evening gown. A wave of profound loss washed over her, not for Robert, not for the penthouse, but for this girl, the one she had been, the one she had so willingly sacrificed on the altar of a man's ambition. A single tear fell, splashing onto the page, smudging a line of ink. The buzz of the apartment intercom startled her, a harsh intrusion into a cocoon of sorrow. It was Sarah, a friend from her pre-Robert life, a kind, no-nonsense art gallery curator who had never quite fit in with Evelyn's high society crowd. Evelyn ignored the first buzz, and the second, but Sarah was persistent. Minutes later, there was a firm knock on the door. "Evie, I know you're in there. I brought lasagna. I'm not leaving until you eat some of it." Reluctantly, Evelyn opened the door. Sarah stood there, a warm casserole dish in her hands and a look of deep, unwavering compassion in her eyes. She didn't offer platitudes or pity. So Wotan took in the state of the apartment and the unopened boxers and simply started unpacking the bag of groceries she'd also brought. "Right," Sarah said, her tone gentle but firm. "First, we eat. Then, we open one box. Just one." They ate the lasagna in near silence, the simple act of sharing a warm meal, a small anchor in Evelyn's turbulent sea of despair. After, Sarah's eyes landed on the sketches scattered on the floor. She knelt and picked one up, a smile touching her lips. "My God, I remember this," she said softly, holding up a drawing of an avant-garde coat. "You were going to be the next big thing. You had more talent in your little finger than anyone in our program." Evelyn just shook her head, unable to speak. "You gave all that up," Sarah continued, not as an accusation, but as a simple statement of fact. She looked at Evelyn, her gaze direct. "He didn't just take your home, Evie. He let you forget who you were." Maybe. This is a chance to remember." Sarah didn't push. She helped Evelyn clean up, made her a cup of tea, and before she left, she placed a fresh, blank sketchbook and a set of drawing pencils on the small coffee table. "Just in case," she said with a soft smile. That night, long after Sarah had gone, Evelyn sat on the floor, surrounded by the ghosts of her past ambitions. She looked at the blank sketchbook, its pristine white pages both intimidating and inviting. Hesitantly, she picked up a pencil. Her hand felt clumsy, the muscle memory long gone. The first line she drew was shaky, uncertain. But then she drew another and another. She wasn't drawing for a professor, or for a client, or for anyone's approval. She was drawing for herself. As the image of a simple, elegant dress began to take shape on the page, a tiny, faint flicker of light ignited in the overwhelming darkness. It wasn't hope, not yet, but it was something. It was resilience. The flicker ignited by the old sketches was a fragile thing, but Evelyn guarded it fiercely. She knew that to protect it, to nurture it into a flame, she needed to build a new life from the ground up, one brick at a time. The first brick was independence. Her settlement, while not insignificant, would not last forever, and the thought of living off the remnants of Robert's world was galling. She needed to earn her own way. This led to a humbling montage of new beginnings. Dressed in simple slacks and a blouse, a stark contrast to her former couture wardrobe, she sat in sterile waiting rooms for job interviews. She was overqualified for some, underqualified for others. Her resume a confusing patchwork of HICE's IT charity work with a 2-decade gap where a career should have been. The rejections were polite but firm, each one a small sting to her already bruised ego. Finally, she landed a job at a small, independent coffee shop called The Daily Grind. The irony was not lost on her. Her days were now filled with the hiss of the espresso machine, the scent of roasting beans, and the constant, chaotic rhythm of customer service. She learned to froth milk, to remember complex orders, to handle rude customers with a grace that was innate, even in this new context. There were moments of deep humiliation, like when a woman she'd once hosted at a dinner party failed to recognize her and complained that her latte was not hot enough. But with each paycheck, a small, hard-earned piece of paper that was entirely her own, she felt a sliver of pride she hadn't experienced in years. The second brick was education. The world of fashion had changed dramatically since her college days. Fueled by a new, tentative sense of purpose, she enrolled in a continuing education program for fashion design at a local community college. Walking onto the campus, she felt a profound sense of being out of place. She was decades older than most of the students, who buzzed with youthful energy and were fluent in a digital language of social media and trend forecasting she didn't understand. Her first few classes were a struggle. Her technical skills were rusty, and the software the students used was completely foreign to her. Yet in the work itself, she found her footing. When given an assignment to design a collection based on a personal journey, she poured the pain, loss, and nascent resilience of the past year into her sketches. Her designs were not trendy or flashy. They were imbued with a quiet strength, an emotional depth, and maturity that made her professor, a stern woman with a critical eye, take notice. "There's a story here, Miss Vance," the professor had commented, her highest form of praise. Her small apartment, once a symbol of her downfall, slowly began to transform into a sanctuary. She unpacked the rest of her boxers, keeping only what truly mattered. The walls, once bare, were now covered with fabric swatches, inspirational images torn from magazines, and her own evolving sketches. Her life fell into a new routine. Early mornings at the coffee shop, evenings in the classroom or hunched over her sewing machine, and late night studying. It was an exhausting, relentless schedule, a world away from the leisurely lunches and afternoon fittings of her past. But it was a life she was building with her own two hands. It was real. The exhaustion was fulfilling. The solitude was peaceful. And for the first time in a very long time, when Evelyn looked at her reflection, she didn't see a ghost or a victim. She saw a woman at work. Through the recommendation of her impressed professor, Evelyn secured an internship at a small, independent fashion boutique in a trendy, artsy neighborhood. The boutique, named Atelier, was the antithesis of the high-end, brand-name stores she used to frequent. It was curated with a fierce, individualistic spirit by its owner, a woman named Chloe. Chloe was sharp, with a shock of silver hair, an encyclopedic knowledge of fashion history, and an attitude. Evelyn's role was far from glamorous. She was an assistant stylist, which was a fancy title for the person who did everything no one else wanted to do. Her days were spent steaming racks of delicate garments, organizing the stockroom into a state of perfect order, making coffee runs, and carefully pinning hems for alterations. She was often invisible, a quiet presence in the background as Chloe and the senior stylists bustled around, creating looks for their discerning clientele. She performed every task with a meticulous dedication that Chloe, who missed nothing, quietly noted. Evelyn's past life, however, had given her a unique and invaluable education. She understood the language of luxury, the subtleties of fabric and fit, and the psychology of dressing powerful women. She watched the stylists work, absorbing everything, but she also saw missed opportunities, combinations they overlooked. Her moment came unexpectedly. A notoriously difficult client, a wealthy art collector known for her exacting tastes and dismissive attitude, arrived for a private appointment. She shot down every look the senior stylist presented. "No, it's too severe. That color washes me out. This feels common." The stylist was flustered, the rack of rejected clothes growing. From the corner of the room where she was organizing a tray of accessories, Evelyn observed. She watched the way the client moved, listened to the subtext of her complaints. The woman wasn't just looking for clothes. She was looking for armor, for something that conveyed her intelligence and creativity without being ostentatious. While everyone was focused on the latest trends, Evelyn remembered a piece tucked away in the back, a beautifully structured architectural silk blouse from a little-known Japanese designer. It was elegant but unconventional. Seeing the senior stylist at a complete loss, Evelyn took a deep breath and stepped forward. "Excuse me," she said softly. "May I suggest something?" Chloe, who was watching from her office, raised an eyebrow. The stylist looked annoyed, but the client, intrigued by the interruption, nodded. Evelyn retrieved the blouse and paired it not with a predictable skirt, but with a pair of wide-leg fluid wool trousers and a unique, handcrafted leather belt. It was a combination no one else had thought of: sophisticated, artistic, and powerful. When the client emerged from the dressing room, she was transformed. The outfit was perfect. "Say, Tola," a look of genuine surprise and pleasure on her face. "This," she said, looking at her reflection. "This is it." "Who are you?" she asked, looking directly at Evelyn. Before Evelyn could answer, Chloe stepped in. "This is Evelyn. She has a very keen eye." That incident was a turning point. Chloe began to give Evelyn more responsibilities. First, it was dressing the window mannequin. Evelyn created a display that was less a showcase for a single outfit and more a miniature art installation, telling a story that drew passers-by into the store. Then, Chloe asked for her opinion on new designers, trusting her innate sense of style and quality. Evelyn's perspective was her superpower. She blended the refined taste from her old world with the gritty, authentic understanding of her new one. She wasn't just dressing bodies. She was interpreting identities, and in the quiet, creative hub of the small boutique, her own unseen talent was finally beginning to blossom. Evelyn's ascent at Atelier was quiet, but swift. Chloe, recognizing the rare combination of raw talent and tireless work ethic, began to see Evelyn not as an assistant, but as a broutique. Her trust culminated in a significant new responsibility. Chloe put Evelyn in charge of conceptualizing and styling the entire lookbook for the boutique's exclusive in-house collection. For Evelyn, this was more than just a job. It was the chance she had dreamed of since she was a girl sketching in her notebooks. She poured every ounce of her being into the project. She didn't just select outfits. She created a narrative, inspired by the Japanese art of kintsugi, the practice of repairing broken pottery with gold. Celebrating the beauty of its imperfections, she themed the collection around resilience and transformation. She chose a location for the photo shoot, not in a sterile studio, but in a beautifully restored industrial loft, with its exposed brick and visible history. She cast a model who was elegant but had character in her face, not just conventional beauty. She worked tirelessly, overseeing every detail, from the lighting to the choice of a single accessory. The final lookbook was a masterpiece. The photographs were evocative and soulful, capturing not just the clothes, a woman's journey. It was sophisticated, authentic, and it resonated with a power that went far beyond mere fashion. Chloe was astounded. "Evelyn," she said, flipping through the pages, "this is art." Chloe sent the lookbook to a few industry contacts, one of whom was the editor of a highly influential online fashion magazine. The editor, jaded by the endless stream of homogeneous content, was captivated by the authenticity and vision of the Atelier lookbook. She ran a multi-page feature, not just on the clothes, but on the story behind them, singling out the brilliant, narrative-driven styling. Suddenly, Evelyn's name began to circulate in niche fashion circles. The article was shared by bloggers and industry insiders. People weren't just talking about the clothes. They were talking about the woman who had styled them. She started receiving emails, tentative inquiries for small freelance projects, styling a musician for an album cover, consulting for an emerging designer, creating an editorial for a local magazine. With each new project, her confidence grew. She was stepping out from behind the scenes, her voice becoming more distinct and respected. She was no longer Robert Vance's forgotten ex-wife. She was Evelyn Vance, the stylist with a unique and powerful point of view. She was building a reputation based on her own merit, her own talent, and her own hard work. The spotlight, which she had once stood beside, was now slowly, surely, beginning to turn towards her. She wasn't chasing it. She was earning it. And as her name grew, the shadow of her past life began to recede, replaced by the bright, promising light of a future she was creating entirely for herself. One rainy Tuesday evening, Evelyn was in her apartment, which now served as her creative studio, surrounded by mood boards and fabric swatches for an upcoming freelance gig. Her phone buzzed with a call from Sarah. "Drop everything and look at your email right now," Sarah said, her voice electric with excitement. Evelyn opened her laptop and found a link from Sarah. It led to an official press release from Chanel. The iconic luxury brand was launching a new global campaign for its signature fragrance. But these was different. The headline read, "Chanel seeks the face of modern elegance, a celebration of authenticity." The release stated they were issuing traditional models and holding an open casting call, looking for a woman whose life story, grace, and inner strength embodied the spirit of the brand. They weren't looking for fame. They were looking for a soul. "You have to go, Evie," Sarah insisted. "This isn't about being a model. This is about being you. Your story, your journey. It's everything they're describing." Evelyn laughed, a sound of pure disbelief. "Sarah, that's insane. They're talking about Chanel. Look at me! I'm a stylist in my 40s who works out of a one-bedroom apartment. They'll have thousands of incredible women auditioning. Self-doubt. That old, familiar ghost, cripped by kin. She walked to her mirror and looked at her reflection. She saw the fine lines around her eyes, etched there by tears and laughter. She saw a strand of silver in her dark hair. She saw story of her life on her face, but she couldn't imagine it being plastered on billboards around the world. The world wanted youth, perfection. The world wanted What do you have to lose? Said oppressed, her voice softening. The woman who styled that kintsugi lookbook, who built a career from nothing, is not a coward. Just go, tell them your story. Sarah's words lingered long after the call ended. For days, Evelyn wrestled with the idea. It felt audacious, impossible, but a small part of her, the part that had picked up a pencil in her darkest hour, was intrigued. What did she have to lose? The day of the audition, she stood outside a sleek, minimalist casting studio in Soho, her heart pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. The waiting room was a sea of intimidatingly beautiful and unique women of all ages and backgrounds. She saw artists, entrepreneurs, writers, activists. For a moment, her nerve failed her, and she turned to leave. But then she thought of the golden cage, of the woman who used to adjust her husband's tie and fade into the background. She had fought too hard to become herself, to run away now. She turned back, walked to the reception desk, and signed in. When her name was finally called, she walked into a brightly lit room where a panel of casting directors, including the legendary creative director of Chanel, sat behind a long table. They looked at her portfolio, which showcased her styling work. Not Ms. Vance, the creative director sighed, his eyes scanning her resume. It says here you're a stylist. Why are you here today? Evelyn took a deep breath, her voice clear and steady. She didn't try to perform. She didn't try to sell herself. She simply told them the truth. She spoke of her love for design, a dream she had set aside. She spoke of loss, of being shattered, and of the slow, arduous process of rebuilding. She spoke of kintsugi, of finding beauty not in perfection, but in the resilience of the human spirit. Elegance, to me, she concluded, looking directly at them, isn't about the clothes you wear or the life you project. It's a quiet strength. It's the grace you find in putting yourself back together, piece by piece, and knowing that the cracks are what make you beautiful. There was a profound silence in the room when she finished. The casting directors looked at each other, a silent communication passing between them. In Evelyn, they saw more than just a beautiful woman. They saw a story, a depth, and a raw, powerful authenticity that no model could ever be directed to fake. They saw the soul of their campaign. The world first saw Evelyn's face on a monolithic billboard in the heart of Times Square. Against a stark minimalist background, she wasn't smiling, a vacant, commercial smile. Her expression was one of serene confidence, her honey-colored eyes looking directly into the camera, holding a universe of experience. The tagline was simple: Chanel, the mark of a life lived. Within days, the campaign was a global phenomenon. Her face graced the glossy pages of every major fashion magazine, from Vogue to Harper's Bazaar. She was on the sides of buses in London, on giant screens in Tokyo's Shibuya Crossing, and in gilded frames in the Chanel boutiques on the Avenue Montaigne in Paris. The campaign was hailed by critics as revolutionary, a bold and beautiful statement on age, experience, and the true meaning of Evelyn Vance became an overnight icon. Her story, briefly and artfully told in the press materials, captivating millions. Meanwhile, in a sleek, glass-walled condo with panoramic city views, Robert Vance was living his new life. He and Selena were hosting a casual evening, lounging on a low-slung white leather sofa, a bottle of expensive wine on the coffee table. The mood was strained. Selena's modeling career, which she had promised to elevate, had stalled. She was beautiful, but in a world of beautiful women, she was just one of many. Their conversations were increasingly circular, revolving around her frustrations and his distracted reassurance. The television was on, tuned to a major network. The sound a low murmur in the background. Suddenly, the iconic, minimalist notes of a Chanel commercial began to play. Robert, swirling the wine in his glass, glanced at the screen with casual interest, and then he froze. The wine glass trembled in his hand, a drop of red spilling onto the pristine white rug. It was Evelyn. But it wasn't the Evelyn he knew. This was not the quiet, accommodating wife who lived in his shadow. The woman on the screen was luminous. The commercial was a cinematic masterpiece, a series of beautifully shot vignettes. It showed her sketching intently in a light-filled studio, her brow furrowed in concentration. It showed her walking purposefully down a cobblestone street, a trench coat slung over her shoulders, a look of quiet determination on her face. It showed her laughing with frenzy. Recognized Sarah in a cozy cafe, a genuine, uninhibited joy radiating from her. Her voice, rich and steady, came through in a voiceover. Some things are broken, not to be discarded, but to be remade, stronger, more beautiful. The final shot was a breathtaking close-up of her face, the same one from the billboards, poised, radiant, utterly, breathtakingly, transformed. Robert couldn't breathe. It was as if the air had been sucked from the room. A tidal wave of emotions crashed over him. Shock, disbelief, and a deep, gut-wrenching regret that was so potent it felt like a physical illness. The woman he had discarded as a relic, as someone who no longer fit into his world, had become the global embodiment of timeless He had traded a masterpiece for a pretty picture. Selina watched him, her own face a mask of stunned horror. She saw the look in his eyes, the look of a man who has just realized the magnitude of the mistake he has made. Her own beauty, the very currency of her life and their relationship, suddenly felt cheap and insignificant in the face of Evelyn's profound grace. A venomous jealousy, sharp and bitter, curdled in her stomach. The trophy he had won now felt like a consolation prize. The woman he had thrown away had just been crowned queen of the world. The annual Fashion Institute Gala was the apex of the industry's social calendar, a dazzling spectacle of art, commerce, and power. A year ago, Evelyn would have been here on Robert's arm, a beautiful but silent partner to his ambition. Tonight, she was the guest of honor. She arrived not as an accessory, but as the main event. The flashbulbs of the paparazzi erupted in a frenzy as she stepped onto the red carpet. She wore a custom Chanel gown, a breathtaking creation of midnight blue silk that she had consulted on with the design team. It was elegant, powerful, and utterly her. She moved with a calm, unhurried grace, the cacophony of her name being shouted by photographers, a distant hum. Smile was genuine, her confidence not borrowed, but forged in the fire of her own making. Inside, the grand hall buzzed with the elite of the fashion world. Designers, editors, and fellow icons greeted her with genuine warmth and admiration. She wasn't a novelty. She was one of them. She stood talking with Sarah and Chloe, her two staunchest allies, their laughter easy and real. This was her circle now, built on mutual respect and shared passion, not social obligation. Across the room, Robert's "Watch it, air." He had secured an invitation through a hefty donation. His presence there, a transparent, desperate ploy. He looked out of place, a ghost from her past, haunting this celebration of her future. Selina was not with him. Their relationship had fractured irreparably in the weeks following the campaign's launch, crumbling under the weight of his regret and her insecurity. Finally, he gathered his courage and made his way through the glittering crowd towards her. He looked older, as usual, polished veneers stripped away, revealing a man lost and uncertain. "Evelyn," he said, his voice hoarse as he reached her small circle. Sarah and Chloe fell silent, their expressions protective. Evelyn turned to him, her face calm, her eyes holding no trace of the anger or pain he had once inflicted. There was only a quiet, knowing peace. "Robert," she acknowledged, her tone even and polite. "You look incredible," he stammered, fumbling for words. "Evelyn, I was a fool. What I did, theirs. Not a day that goes by that I don't regret it. I never should have let you go." It was a clumsy, desperate confession, the plea of a man who had lost something priceless and only realized its value when it was gone. Evelyn listened patiently, without interruption. When he finished, a small, genuine smile touched her lips. It was not a smile of triumph or pity, but of sincere, entrebled grace. "Thank you, Robert," she said, her voice steady and kind. "But you shouldn't have any regrets. You did what you thought was right at the time." She paused, her gaze unwavering. "In a way, you set me free. I was forced to find the person I had forgotten, and I wouldn't trade the woman I am today for anything." Her words were not a weapon, but a simple, profound truth. They offered him a strange sort of absolution while simultaneously closing the door to her past completely. She had moved on, not out of spite, but because her new life was so full and vibrant that there was simply no room for him in. "My friends are waiting," she said gently, turning back to Sarah and Chloe. "It was good to see you." With that polite final dismissal, she walked away, leaving him standing alone in the middle of the crowded ballroom. He watched her go, a solitary figure swallowed by the warmth and light of her new world. The final shot was of Evelyn, laughing with her friends, her face illuminated by joy. She had found her success, her happiness, her truest self, and she realized, in that brilliant moment of clarity, that the true crown she wore was not the fame or the Chanel contract, but the unshakable self-worth she had built from the ashes of a life she was now grateful to have lost.